do something about this snake. It's too aggressive, it's too dangerous, and far too many people are bitten by it. We have tried a couple of ways to get rid of snakes ever since we settled here in Australia. We've tried the shotgun and we've tried the shovel, but neither of those techniques have been all that successful. Oh look, I'll agree with anyone that a shotgun and a shovel gets rid of one snake, but it doesn't get rid of the reason why the snake was there. It was there because we provided its food source. Hey, if you are determined to kill every snake that you come across, you're a firm believer that the best snake's a dead snake, I'm not going to try and change your mind. I don't think I'd ever be able to do that anyway, but I can give you a little tip. The tip is the brown snake can throw itself about twice the length of its body. So if it's a 6-foot brown snake you decide you're going to chop up with a spade, I reckon it'd be a fairly good idea to start off with a 12-foot handle on your spade, because otherwise you've got to get yourself into the strike zone, where the snake can actually come back on itself and bite you. In fact, 90% of the bites that occur in Australia occur when the person's trying to catch or kill the snake at the time. So catching these snakes and chopping them up with the spade's not really fixing the problem. I think that's only putting us in hospital. I know that we can do something about this snake bite problem that we have by understanding why the snake's there. It's there because we provide its food source. So if we got together and cleaned up around our sheds and our yards and our aviaries and reduced the number of mice that are around, I reckon we'd go a long way towards reducing the number of snakes that are around. That in turn would save lives, and that's something we can all do together right throughout Australia. You see, most snakes in Australia have relatively short fangs, no more than a few millimetres long. So that means when we're walking around our creeks and dams, through long grass, even around our own fence lines, and we can remember to keep a good set of boots on and a good set of jeans on, most snakes are not going to be able to get their fangs through to our skin. I won't tell you they can't bite through your jeans, but the way they deliver their venom is just a small amount of venom trickles down the fang. It's not actually squirted out or sprayed out. So if this snake was to bite you on the cloth of the jeans, hopefully most of that venom would be absorbed by the cloth and not by the skin. So a little bit of common sense with what we wear, I believe, will go a long way towards stopping a snake physically being able to bite us. I've got one more snake I'd like to show you. It's very interesting, very dangerous, and certainly a snake that's worthwhile hanging around to have a look at. I've got one of the old systems with me. Some of you may recognise this one, the Condy's Crystal Skit. Do you remember seeing these around? They were pretty popular, weren't they? I blew the instructions up so you can get a bit of a laugh about what we used to do back in the old days. Just have a look at the top bit there. Act quickly, but don't get excited. Well, I reckon you're going to get fairly excited with a big old brown snake hanging off the side of your leg, that's for sure. Number 3 here says, cut the bite with the lancet. That's the sharp piece on the end, about 1/4 of an inch deep, and about 1 inch long through each of the punches and along the limb. It says here to allow it to bleed freely. What I'd like to know is how do you stop it bleeding freely when you've just done that to yourself? This has got to be the best bit of advice they've ever given us. Just have a look there. Avoid cutting across muscles or veins. Well, I'd say at all costs. What about number 5? If your lips are not cracked and you have no decayed teeth, suck the wound, spitting out after each sucking. You know, they used to say get your mate to suck the venom out, but they quickly found that if you were bitten by a snake, you'd turn around and all your mates were gone. They knew exactly what was coming up next. Well, I think this belongs in a museum, not in a first aid kit. One of the reasons why it doesn't work is because when an Australian snake bites you, the venom doesn't actually go into your blood straight away. Where it goes is into the fatty tissue that's under the skin. The fatty tissue is called the lymphatic system. Boys and girls, just take your finger for a minute and just gently push it on the back of your hand like that, then let go. See how it changes colour a little bit? That's where the venom goes. It doesn't actually go into the blood straight away. So if you were bitten on the hand, that venom would have to travel all the way up your arm through that fatty tissue until it reached a part of your body called the lymph glands. Now we have lymph glands under our arms, in our throat and down here in our groin. Then the venom would enter into the bloodstream. That's when it does its damage, and that's when we start to get sick. So we need to stop the venom from reaching the bloodstream and doing its damage. We can't stop it, but we can slow it down. If we put a little bit of pressure on that fatty tissue, we can slow the spread of the venom down considerably. In the past, they've said to take a bandage and bandage where you were bitten, go down and then go back up again. But that's fine for us adults, no problem at all. But when it comes to the young kids, that's a lot of information for a young child to try and remember, especially in a panic situation. St John's Ambulance Service realised this, so they changed it recently just to make it a little easier for the kids to understand. What they teach in their first aid classes now is to take a broad pressure bandage. It has to be a big, wide, thick bandage. The little short half ones that are in most of our first aid kits, well, I don't believe they'll be enough to cover a whole arm, let alone a whole leg if we were bitten by a snake. And it wouldn't matter if we were bitten on the finger, on the hand, on the arm, even above the elbow. So anywhere on that limb at all we need to do is start at the fingers, and this is so much easier for the kids to remember. Just start there at one end, boys and girls, and then wind the bandage up the arm. about the same tension you do if you sprained your wrist or you sprained your ankle. You're not trying to cut the circulation off. All you're doing is applying a little bit of pressure to the fatty tissue that's under the skin. You're slowing the spread of the venom down. Now, once this bandage has covered the whole arm, you need to keep the arm as still as possible. This system is called pressure and immobilisation. The bandage provides the pressure. Putting it into a sling or even putting a splint on it will immobilise it or keep it still, and that'll slow the spread of the venom down so much that it could take anything from 6 to 8 hours before that venom travelled through that fatty tissue, got to the lymph gland, entered our bloodstream, did its damage and started to make us sick. Well, 6 to 8 hours should be plenty of time for an ambulance to arrive or someone to raise the alarm bells and come back with a bit of help. If you were unfortunate enough to be bitten on the leg or the foot or the ankle, just start at the toes. Wind the bandage up the leg as far up as you can. You'll need to keep that leg still, so you'll need a splint. You could use a stick, a piece of wood, anything at all just to limit the movement. The good news is, no one in Australia has died from snakebite that's used this simple system. Not one death's been recorded. Unfortunately, last year 4 people lost their lives to brown snakes. Every one of those cases clearly shows there was no first aid in place at the time. So something so simple as this piece of cloth and a technique that's so easy for any of the kids to learn, I firmly believe is the answer to snakebite death in Australia. But back in the good old days when we had those Condy's crystals kits, if you were bitten by a snake back then, you had to go and physically catch the snake that just bit you and take it up the hospital with you for identification. What a bag of fun that'd be. Big old brown snake just bit you, now you've got to go and chase him through the bush. Fairly good chance you're just going to pass out because you'd pump all the venom around your body. Well, luckily we don't have to do things like that these days. If you don't wash the area where you've been bitten, at the hospital they'll leave the bandage on. They won't take it off straight away. All they do is just peel it back a little like that, just to reveal the area where the snake has bitten you. They'll just take a swab or a test of the venom that's left on the outside of the skin, and within half an hour they'll be able to tell exactly what sort of snake it was that bit you. Then they can give you the correct anti-venom for that particular type of snake. Just remember, while the bandage is left on, you're not getting the symptoms of the bite because the venom's been trapped in the fatty tissue. It hasn't had time to flow through, get into the bloodstream, do its damage and start to make us sick. There is one catch to this simple system though. The catch is, we need to have the bandage on within 1 to 2 minutes of being bitten by the snake. We need to trap the venom as quickly as we possibly can. We can't allow it to spread around our bodies. So when we go out camping or bushwalking, fishing, shooting, any of those sort of things, it's not a bad idea to carry one of these with you. I keep one in my toolbox so when I go and do a little bit of fencing or even clear of some firewood, well, at least I know I've got one fairly handy. It's a good idea for the kids to carry them on their belt when they go down the creek or down the dam. I think we'd all agree kids can be a little more curious than us adults are, and they certainly do get themselves into some sticky situations from time to time. I reckon it's a good idea to keep one in the glove box of the car. We often see dead snakes on the road in the summer. Now, if we stop our vehicles to stretch our legs on long trips or even open gates to go onto properties, unfortunately, we do go into areas where snakes can and will occur. Try to have something like this with you. Hopefully it's only there for a bit of peace of mind. Hopefully you would never ever need to use it. But I'll tell you what, one day if you had to call upon it, I think you'd be pretty pleased that you had it with you. Now, this snake that I'm going to show you next is a snake that doesn't occur in this area. Being a local and quite often being called out to remove snakes from people's backyards, I'm pretty pleased that this type of snake doesn't sort of hang around in these sort of places. Where this snake occurs is in the northern tip of New South Wales, up through the coastal ranges of Queensland, and certainly across into the Northern Territory. I've been up in those areas a number of times and I've talked to a lot of the locals about the common snakes that they encounter. Now, when I mention the name of this snake to those folks, you could almost see a look of fear in their face. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, allow me to introduce you to a snake that we call the taipan. A very aggressive and certainly a very, very dangerous snake indeed. Now, this is the largest of the venomous snakes that we have here in Australia. This one's only a baby. It's got a lot of growing to do yet. They can get up around 10 feet in length, maybe even a little more. When they're up around their full size, they can have a fang length in excess of 12.5 millimetres long. A very large snake with very large fangs certainly makes it a dangerous snake indeed. But when you combine that with the fact that this snake has the 3rd most toxic venom of any snake in the world and the 2nd highest amount of venom of any of our Australian snakes, certainly puts it into a class of its own. This snake is a repeat striker. It doesn't just hit once and that's it, its job's done. This snake will strike 3 or 4 times in the blink of an eye. Very fast, very active and a very agile snake indeed. It is considered to be one of the world's most dangerous snakes, and that's certainly a theory that I'd prescribe to. You see, up until the invent of antivenom in 1955 for the taipan, no one had actually survived the bite of this type of snake. Now, with the quality of the hospital systems that we have these days and the simple first aid procedure that I've just shown you, no one should die, even from a snake that carries the potential that the taipan does. Just think about a couple of things, like a little bit of common sense with what we wear. A good set of boots and a good set of jeans, that's going to go a long way towards stopping most snakes from being able to bite through and get our skin. Being able to stand still when you're this close to even a snake that has the potential that the taipan has will stop that snake from biting you, because they just don't bite things that don't move. Having something so simple as one of those bandages strategically placed around your property, or even better still, on your hip when you go into areas where snakes may occur, will make an enormous difference, because no one in Australia has died from snake bite that's used